I've been a trucker for almost 12 years now. Long stretches of highway, endless miles, and the hum of the engine. That's my life. I'm used to the solitude, the quiet nights under a starless sky, and the eerie feeling that always comes when you're driving in the dead of night. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what happened that one night. It was around 2:30 a.m. when I got the call. I had just crossed into a small, sleepy town in Wyoming. One of those places that you wouldn't even remember passing through if you blinked. The rain was coming down in sheets, and the visibility was crap. I was ready to pull over and rest for the night, but then I heard the dispatch radio crackle. "David, you got a last-minute pickup in this area. Route's clear, but it's a back road. You up for it?" It wasn't a question I was in the mood to answer. I hated back roads at night. Too many sharp turns, too many trees closing in around you like they were waiting to swallow the truck whole. But I needed the cash, so I pushed the pedal down and steered onto the rural road. The rain had turned the asphalt into a slick, glossy mess, and my truck's headlights barely cut through the downpour. That's when I saw it. A figure standing by the side of the road, just beyond the beam of my headlights. It wasn't moving, just standing there in the rain like some kind of ghost. I slowed down, thinking it was just a hitchhiker, though I never picked up anyone, not on a road like this. But as I passed, I noticed something that sent chills down my spine. The figure wasn't just standing still. Its eyes, they glowed like they were reflecting the light of the truck. I shook it off as a trick of the rain, or maybe my eyes playing tricks on me, but something didn't feel right. I kept going, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual, the tension in the air growing thicker with every mile. Then it happened. I rounded a bend in the road and the truck shuddered violently. The engine sputtered, and for a moment I thought I was going to lose control. The dashboard flickered and the lights went out. Complete darkness. No streetlights, no headlights, just me in the storm. The kind of silence that wraps itself around you like a suffocating blanket. I pulled over, hoping it was just a malfunction. I was already reaching for the flashlight when I heard it, a low, guttural growl. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but it wasn't. This wasn't nature's noise. It was something else, something close. Something alive. I froze, the flashlight halfway to my grip. Then I heard it again. Closer. I turned toward the sound, my heart hammering in my chest. Through the rain, I could make out the shape of something moving, no, shifting in the shadows. It was big. Too big to be a deer or any animal I'd ever seen on these roads. My hand instinctively reached for the door handle, but then I heard the voice. The voice was strange. It was low, deep, like it came from somewhere far away yet somehow right beside me. I couldn't make out the words at first. Just whispers. It sounded like something ancient. The hair on my neck stood on end and my breath hitched. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, a figment of the storm, the wind howling through the trees, maybe even a hallucination. But then it came again. "You shouldn't have stopped." It wasn't a question. It wasn't a warning. It was a statement. And it came from just outside my truck. My pulse skyrocketed. I could feel my heart thudding in my chest, loud enough to drown out the rain. My instincts screamed at me to drive, to get out of there, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. Then the growl came again, but this time it was clearer. It was no longer distant, it was right outside my window, just beyond the glass. I slowly turned my head to the side, my eyes struggling to adjust to the darkness. The only light came from the faint glow of the dashboard, casting long shadows across the interior. I saw it. Or rather, I saw part of it. The silhouette was enormous. Something tall, hunched, with limbs that seemed to stretch unnaturally long. Its body was like a mass of shifting shapes, darker than the night itself. But what struck me the most were its eyes, those glowing eyes, brighter than anything I'd ever seen. It stared at me through the rain-soaked window, unblinking. And that was when I noticed something else. There was a faint mist surrounding it, like the air itself was too thick to breathe. I couldn't think straight. My fingers fumbled for the keys, but they felt like they were a million miles away. The growl came again, louder this time, like the thing was right there at my door. I could almost hear it breathing. Heavy. Wet. I knew I had to leave. I knew it. I slammed my hand onto the ignition, praying it would start, but the truck didn't respond. The engine groaned, then went silent. Panic flooded my body, and I could feel my throat tighten with the fear that this was it, that I was about to become just another forgotten soul on some back road in the middle of nowhere. And then, it spoke again. "You can't run." The voice wasn't just in the air anymore. It was inside my head. That was the moment I understood. Whatever this thing was, it was toying with me. It wanted to make me feel helpless. Wanted me to know there was no escape. My eyes darted around, searching for anything to use, anything to fight back. My flashlight. I grabbed it with shaking hands and flicked it on, pointing it toward the thing outside. The beam of light caught it for a split second. The creature's face, if you could call it that, was barely visible, but what I saw made me choke on my own breath. It was a mess of jagged, twisted features. Like its face had been scraped together from parts of other creatures, stitched and mangled into something horrific. The eyes, those glowing eyes, were the only thing human about it. And they were full of something I couldn't quite comprehend: hunger. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished into the trees, disappearing into the night like it was never there at all. But I knew better. For a moment, I thought I had imagined it. The thing outside, the voice, it all felt like some twisted nightmare. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I could still feel its presence, lingering in the air like a thick fog that clung to my skin. My truck's engine was still dead, and the silence of the night had returned, only now it felt suffocating. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog in my mind. "Stay calm, David," I told myself. "You can figure this out." I grabbed my phone, but there was no signal, nothing. It was like the whole area was cut off from the world. No backup, no help. I had to get out of there. I had no choice. With trembling hands, I pulled the door handle, stepping out into the rain, trying to ignore the dread crawling up my spine. My boots splashed in the mud as I moved to the front of the truck to check the engine. I wasn't a mechanic, but I knew enough to at least see if there was something obvious. As I knelt down, I heard something, an unmistakable snap of a twig. My head whipped around, and my heart nearly stopped. There it was again, the growl, low and deep, like the rumbling of thunder before a storm. I didn't think. I ran. I ran like hell, scrambling back to the driver's seat, my fingers slipping as I tried to turn the key. Still nothing. The truck was dead. The growl got louder, closer. I looked out the window, but the thing wasn't in sight. Yet, I could hear it now, moving through the trees. It was tracking me. I grabbed the flashlight from the passenger seat and shone it toward the woods. My breath came in short, panicked gasps as the beam cut through the rain. And then, for just a split second, I saw it. It was standing at the edge of the trees, its body twisted in ways that made no sense. Its eyes glowed brighter than ever, cutting through the darkness like a warning. It didn't move. It just stared at me as though waiting for me to make the next move. I knew it was toying with me. I threw the truck door open again, and this time I didn't hesitate. I bolted. I ran faster than I ever had in my life, not caring about the mud sucking at my boots or the branches slapping my face. All I could hear was the pounding of my own heart and the growl that was growing louder, closer. My only thought was to survive. And then I felt it, the wind shifted. I froze mid-step, the air suddenly still around me. There was a weight on my chest, a sense of pressure that made it hard to breathe. I turned around and the creature was there. Not far off, maybe 10 yards. But what struck me wasn't just its proximity. It was how it moved. It wasn't walking. It was gliding, hovering just above the ground, its legs twisted and distorted like it was floating. The glowing eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time, I felt something much worse than fear. I felt powerless. "You can't run from me." The voice was louder now, clearer. But it wasn't just a voice anymore. It was in my head, drowning out everything else. My knees buckled, and I almost collapsed right there. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. I had one last card to play. I turned and sprinted back to the truck, knowing it was my only chance. The rain came down harder, and my hands were shaking too badly to get the door open. But then I heard it, footsteps. Close. I turned, and the creature was right behind me, moving impossibly fast. Its eyes burned through the rain, glowing brighter with every step it took toward me. I had no choice. I had to fight. I've never been one for fighting. Hell, most of the time I avoid confrontation, especially when I'm on the road. But in that moment, standing in the pouring rain with something out of my worst nightmares creeping up on me, there was no other choice. The creature was so close now, its shape moving like a blur, a nightmare made flesh. I could see its teeth, jagged, yellow, too many for a creature that should have never existed. Its long, twisted limbs scraped against the truck, dragging behind it like something out of a horror movie. I felt my stomach twist into knots, the urge to run hitting me harder than anything I'd ever felt in my life. But there was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. This thing was the hunter, and I was the prey. In that desperate, final moment, I remembered something. The flare gun. I kept it in the glove compartment, part of the emergency kit I always had with me. I wasn't sure how it would help, but it was my only chance. I threw the truck door open, and my hands scrambled for the flare gun. I barely even aimed it. I just pulled the trigger. The burst of light exploded into the night like a shot of lightning, the flame bright and searing against the darkness. The creature hissed, a sound that was pure fury. It recoiled for a moment, backing off as the light burned its eyes. But that wasn't enough to stop it. It had felt the pain, but it wasn't done. It wasn't even close to done. I ran again, but this time I wasn't just trying to survive, I was trying to fight for my life. I grabbed whatever I could find. A wrench from the truck's toolbox. A tire iron. Anything to keep it at bay. The creature charged, and I swung the wrench blindly, hoping to land a blow. It didn't work. The thing's body was too fluid, too unpredictable. It dodged effortlessly, its glowing eyes fixed on mine. "Come on, you bastard," I shouted, swinging again. I could feel my adrenaline coursing through me, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. The thing lunged at me, and I barely ducked in time. Its claws raked across the truck's hood, leaving deep gashes in the metal like it was made of paper. The noise it made, a screech so high-pitched it felt like it was scraping against my bones, nearly knocked me out. I had only one thing left to try. I turned and ran toward the trees, praying that I could lose it in the woods. The sound of its footfalls behind me was relentless. It was getting closer. My breath was ragged, my legs aching, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't. I was almost at the tree line when I felt it, a sudden sharp pain across my back. It was like being struck by a hammer, and I fell to the ground, the wind knocked out of me. I rolled onto my back, gasping for air. My flashlight fell from my hand, casting eerie shadows across the ground. The creature stood over me now, towering. I could see its twisted, mangled face more clearly than ever. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of teeth, and I knew it was about to tear me apart. But then, something happened. A sound. It was like a distant roar. A booming noise that seemed to shake the very earth beneath me. The creature froze, its head snapping toward the source of the sound. And then it turned. It ran. I watched in disbelief as the thing darted back into the woods, disappearing into the darkness. I lay there for what felt like hours, my body trembling from the shock of it all. Slowly, I pushed myself up. The pain in my back was excruciating, but I forced myself to my feet. What the hell had just happened? I didn't stick around to find out. I ran back to the truck, grabbed my keys, and hit the road, leaving the nightmare behind me. I drove for hours without stopping, not caring about the miles or the exhaustion. I couldn't shake the image of those glowing eyes, the distorted face, and that roar. What had it been? And why had it saved me? I don't know. I'll never know. But I'm here. I survived. And every time I drive those back roads now, I wonder, if that thing was real, what else is out there? What else is waiting? It's been weeks since that night. Weeks of wondering if I was losing my mind, if I really saw what I thought I saw. But every time I close my eyes, I can still hear the growl, feel the weight of those eyes on me. It's not something you can forget. I didn't report what happened. What was I supposed to say? Hey, I almost got eaten by a twisted monster on a back road in Wyoming? No one would believe me. They'd lock me up, or worse, send me out there again to face whatever that thing was, only this time, alone. And if I'm honest with myself, I don't think I could survive another encounter. But here's the thing, it's not over. I kept driving. I had to. I needed the money. I needed the miles. The road is the only place that feels like home. But the further I went, the more things started happening. The strange noises, the flickering of my truck's lights, the cold spots in the cabin even when the air conditioning's off. I started seeing things out of the corner of my eye, just like I had that night. At first, I thought I was going crazy. It didn't help that I wasn't sleeping much, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. Every time I stopped for a break or pulled into a truck stop, I couldn't help but look over my shoulder, scanning the shadows. One night, about a month after the incident, I was parked at a truck stop just outside of Denver. I was exhausted, too tired to keep my eyes open, but I knew I had to rest before getting back on the road. I grabbed my blanket, shut off the engine, and tried to sleep. That's when I heard it again. The same guttural growl, low and menacing, cutting through the stillness of the night. I froze, heart hammering in my chest. My eyes shot open, scanning the dark lot through the side window of my truck. But everything looked normal. No strange figures, no glowing eyes. It was just the sound. I pulled the truck door open slowly, stepping out into the cold night air. There was nothing around. The lot was empty, save for a few other trucks parked under the dim lights. The wind howled in the distance, and the only other noise was the occasional hum of the vending machines in the corner. I walked to the back of my rig, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but part of me knew deep down that I was being watched. Then I saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the lot, just beyond the reach of the nearest light. A silhouette, familiar yet somehow wrong. It was tall, hunched, like the thing I had seen that night in Wyoming. Couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. It was like the air itself was pressing against my chest. And then it spoke. "You should never have left." That voice? It was the same thing that had haunted me all this time. I didn't wait for it to move. I didn't care if it followed me. I turned and ran back to my truck, slamming the door shut behind me. My heart was pounding in my ears as I fumbled for the ignition. This time, the truck started without hesitation. I floored it out of the lot, leaving the eerie figure behind. But that voice, those glowing eyes, they haven't gone away. I can still feel them watching me from the shadows. And I know now that the thing I encountered that night wasn't just a creature. It's something older, something far more dangerous. I don't know why it let me go. I don't know if it was because of that roar or if it's waiting for me to make a mistake. But every time I drive those roads, I feel its presence lurking, just out of sight. And I know one thing for certain, it's not finished with me. It's still out there somewhere, watching, waiting. And when it's ready, I'll be the one who's hunted. I wish I could tell you that the nightmare ended after that. That I somehow found a way to outrun whatever that thing was. But the truth is, it never left. It's been months now, and I've tried to keep going, keep working. I can't let it take everything from me. But the fear? The constant dread? It never goes away. It's not just the growls or the shadows that follow me anymore. It's the feeling that something's always just behind me, like it's watching my every move. No matter how far I drive, how many miles I put between myself and that hellish night, it feels like the world is closing in on me. I know what you're thinking, that I'm crazy, that I'm imagining things. But if you could see the things I've seen, the horrors I've lived through, you wouldn't be so quick to judge. A couple of weeks ago, I was driving through a remote part of Utah in the middle of nowhere as usual. The highway stretched for miles with no other cars in sight, just endless desert on either side. It was one of those nights when you can hear the hum of the tires on the asphalt and it feels like you're the only person left in the world. But I wasn't alone. I felt it again, that presence, the same bone-deep feeling that I couldn't escape. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I was exhausted, having driven for hours without rest. But then the engine sputtered. The lights on the dashboard flickered. And just like that, I was back in it, back to the horror that had followed me ever since that night. I slammed my hands on the wheel, trying to keep the truck steady, but it wasn't working. The road ahead started to distort, the shadows shifting in ways they shouldn't. My headlights illuminated shapes that weren't there before. Figures moving in the distance like they were coming closer. And then I saw it again. That figure. I know it's hard to believe, but I swear on my life, it was the same one. Tall, hunched, with those glowing eyes that seemed to pierce the very air. But this time, there was something different. There were more of them. At least 3, maybe 4, all standing in the distance, watching me. Waiting. I pulled over to the side of the road, heart racing, and for the first time since that night in Wyoming, I felt trapped. There was nowhere to run. I couldn't even see the exit, just an endless stretch of dark highway in both directions. I grabbed my flare gun again. I wasn't sure it would do anything this time, but it was all I had. The figures started to move, slowly, deliberately. The one closest to me stepped forward, its eyes glowing brighter than ever. And that's when I realized something. This wasn't just a hunt anymore. This was a message. It had been toying with me, waiting for the right time. It was waiting for me to break. I fired the flare into the air. It shot out with a deafening pop, lighting up the dark desert around me. The light illuminated the creatures, if you could even call them that. They weren't human, not in any way I could recognize. But they were intelligent. I could see the way they moved, the way they reacted to the light. They understood it. They knew what I was trying to do. And then, in a sickening moment of clarity, I heard the voice again. But this time, it wasn't just in my head. It was real, as if it was standing right next to me. "You can't escape. You're ours now." I don't know what happened next. My hands were shaking, my vision blurred, and I swear I could feel my sanity slipping away. All I remember is hearing a scream. A long, gut-wrenching scream that tore through the night. And then, silence. When I came to, the figures were gone. The desert stretched out before me, as empty and lifeless as it had been before. The truck was still running, and the flare had burned out. I don't know how long I'd been unconscious. Could have been seconds, could have been hours. I don't know what's real anymore. All I know is that I can't keep running. This thing, whatever it is, it's not going to let me go. It knows I'm here. It knows where I am. And now it's not just hunting me. It's coming for everyone. So, if you're reading this, if you're hearing my story, don't go to the back roads at night. If you see something out of the corner of your eye, don't turn around. Don't stop, because it's always watching. And one day it'll be too late to escape. I know what you're thinking. How could I still be alive? After everything that's happened, why am I still here? Still telling this story? It's simple. I've learned that some things don't die. Some things don't go away. They linger, waiting, watching. And I learned the hard way that when something like this locks onto you, it doesn't just let go. It's been weeks since I last drove through that stretch of highway in Utah. I'm not sure if I could even bring myself to drive that road again. I've been trying to avoid it, trying to move on, act like it was all a bad dream. But every time I close my eyes, I see the glowing eyes of those creatures. And sometimes, I hear them whispering. The voice. It's always there even when I'm awake. Even when I'm driving through the day. The message is clear, you're not safe. But I couldn't stay home forever. A trucker's life isn't exactly one for vacations. You're always moving, always on the road, and the bills don't pay themselves. So I took a job out east, a routine run across the Midwest. The route was familiar enough to me, I'd done it 100 times before. But on this trip, something was different. It was a bright afternoon when I rolled into a small town in Nebraska. Nothing special. A typical truck stop, some greasy food, a few truckers milling about, just like any other. But as soon as I pulled into the lot, something in the air changed. There was a man at the far end of the lot. He wasn't a trucker, though. He was just standing there, staring at the ground with his back to me. But there was something about him, something that made me uneasy. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe it was just fatigue messing with my mind. But as I got out of the truck, I caught his scent. It wasn't the smell of sweat or diesel, it was something rotten. Something that didn't belong. I took a few steps forward, and that's when he turned. Slowly. His eyes, those eyes, were the same as the ones I'd seen before. Glowing, burning, like they could see right through me. But something was off. His skin was pale, stretched thin over bone, like he was barely alive. That's when I understood. He wasn't just standing there. He was waiting. He raised a finger to his lips, a warning. And then he spoke. It's already too late. It's looking for you. It's not just the back roads anymore. I froze, my blood running cold. I hadn't told anyone about what happened to me. How did he know? You thought you were safe, didn't you? He whispered. You can't outrun it. It's been following you through every mile. It's always there. Just when you think you've left it behind, it's right behind you. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. The man smiled. A slow, dreadful smile. And his voice dropped to a whisper. You don't know who you're dealing with. You think it's one thing? No, it's a hunting force. A power that's been watching for centuries. It doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what you do. It only cares that you run. I stumbled back a few steps, my head spinning. What was he talking about? How was it still following me? How did he know what I'd been through? And then, as quickly as he had appeared, he turned and walked away. I called out to him, but he didn't respond. He simply vanished into the shadows of the lot. I stood there, unable to move as the weight of his words sank in. Was he trying to warn me? Or was he something worse, something attached to the thing that's been hunting me? The voice in my head whispered again. You can't escape. It's coming for you. No matter where you go. I don't know if that man was a warning or a sign. But I do know this, I'm not safe. None of us are. The creatures? They're not the only ones out there. There's something bigger at play here. Something older. And it's not finished with me. So, if you're still driving those roads, if you're still pushing through those lonely nights, remember this, it is watching. It's always waiting. And when it comes, it doesn't just hunt you. It owns you. I wish I could tell you that after hearing that man's warning, I just packed it all in and walked away from the life of a trucker. That I found peace and left the road behind. But that would be a lie. Couldn't stop. Couldn't give up. There's something inside you after a life like mine. A need to keep moving, to outrun what's chasing you. But no matter how many miles I put between me and that creature, no matter how far I drove, the feeling never left. It's like the road became part of me, and it knew I couldn't escape. After that day in Nebraska, things took a darker turn. The shadows grew longer, and the whispers got louder. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those glowing eyes. Every time I stopped for fuel, I swore I saw them in the corner of my vision, always watching, always waiting. One night, while crossing through Colorado, it happened again. I was parked at a rest stop off the highway, trying to get some sleep. The night was eerily still. No wind, no sound. Just the quiet hum of my truck's engine idling in the background. The dim light from the overhead lamp flickered like it was struggling to stay on. I felt at first the sudden shift in the air. The same oppressive weight I had felt that night in Wyoming when I thought I was done for. I was wide awake in an instant, heart pounding, a cold sweat breaking out on my skin. I sat up looking around. At first, there was nothing. Just empty asphalt, distant trees, and the faint glow of a streetlight cutting through the darkness. But I felt it. There, just beyond the reach of the light, I saw it. A figure standing, motionless. Its back was to me. But it wasn't the man from Nebraska. This thing was different. Taller. Its form was more distinct, more solid. And as the dim light flickered again, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't alone. There were others, at least 4 of them, standing in the shadows, watching. And just like that, I knew. They weren't human. They weren't anything human. The eyes, they burned brighter than the lights above me, but this time, they weren't the only thing I noticed. The air around them, it buzzed. Like static electricity, but heavier. Like a storm was rolling in, even though the sky was clear. I had no idea what they were, but I knew one thing for sure. They weren't just hunting me. They were calling to me. Like they wanted me to come closer, to get closer to whatever hell they were from. I reached for my keys, my hands shaking. I started the truck, but as soon as the engine roared to life, the lights went out. The world around me plunged into darkness. The growl started again, that low, monstrous sound that made my skin crawl. I tried the ignition again. Nothing. The lights flickered, then went dead. And then that voice. You can't outrun it. Not anymore. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. My truck was locked up tight, but I could hear them coming closer. The ground vibrated beneath me as their footsteps grew louder, closer. I don't know how long I sat there, paralyzed in fear. It felt like hours. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I saw it. A bright flash. A burst of light, so intense it blinded me for a moment. I squinted, trying to make sense of what was happening, and saw the figures retreating, backing away into the shadows, disappearing like they were never there at all. The growl faded, and the hum of the world returned. The truck's lights flickered back on, and the engine roared to life once more. I don't know who or what saved me that night. Maybe it was the flare I had kept stashed in my cab. Maybe it was something else. Something different. But the thing I do know, it wasn't over. The road is still cursed. The creatures still lurk in the dark. And the voice? It's still with me, haunting me, telling me that there's no escape. The thing I realized after all this time is that it's never been about me. It's about the road. It's about the miles, the endless stretches of highway where the earth meets the sky, where no one can hear you scream and no one can help. Whatever these creatures are, whatever that force is, it's been waiting here, waiting for someone like me to drive straight into its grasp. And it won't stop until I've been claimed. So if you're a trucker, or if you ever find yourself out on those lonely back roads, know this, you're never truly alone. The road has a way of keeping you, of pulling you back in no matter how far you go. And one day it'll come for you too. I wish I could tell you that after everything I've been through, I found a way to end it, that I found the key to breaking free, or that I outsmarted the thing that's been hunting me. But that's not the truth. The truth is, I'm not sure it can ever be ended. It's like an infection, something that's grown inside me, something I can't escape. The creatures are real, and whatever they are, whatever they want, it's far bigger than I ever imagined. There's a part of me deep down that believes the road itself is alive, that it's not just a place, it's a thing, a force. And it's been watching me, waiting for me ever since the first night in Wyoming. Maybe even before that. A few weeks ago, I got another call. It was a routine run, nothing out of the ordinary. I was heading out to the East Coast, same as always. But this time, something felt different. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. I could feel it pressing against me as soon as I started driving. I drove through the night just like I've done 1,000 times. The highway stretched on for miles, but there was no comfort in the familiar rhythm anymore. The world around me was too quiet, too still. And then, like clockwork, it started again. The low growl, the way the shadows shifted in the corner of my vision. I don't know how long it took me to reach the spot, but when I did, I knew this was the place. The place where it would all end. It had to. There was no running anymore. No more hiding. The road had led me here, and the thing that had been chasing me for so long was ready for the final act. I pulled over on a dark stretch of highway, the truck's engine sputtering as if it knew something was coming. The sky above me was thick with dark clouds, the moon barely visible through the haze. I stepped out, knowing full well what I'd find. The figures were waiting for me. The same twisted, hunched shapes that I had seen so many times before. Their glowing eyes burned through the darkness like lighthouses in the middle of an endless ocean. They weren't alone this time, though. There were more, too many to count. I wasn't scared anymore. I couldn't be. I had learned that fear was just another way the road had controlled me. That's how it had kept me running all this time. I stood in front of the truck, facing them. My heart was steady now, my mind clearer than it had been in years. They spoke, not with words, but with thoughts. And the message was the same as it had always been. It's over. I wasn't sure if they were speaking to me or if they were speaking to something else. Something deeper. Something that controlled everything, the road itself. The air grew heavier, pressing down on me like the weight of the entire world. I could feel the ground beneath me shift like the earth itself was alive, pulling at my feet. The creatures stepped forward, and I knew this was it. This was where it ended. But then something changed. A loud crack echoed through the air, followed by a thunderous roar. It came from the distance, growing louder with each passing second. And I knew deep down that it wasn't the creatures that had caused it. No, it was something bigger. Something had come to take its place. The creatures recoiled, backing away into the darkness, their eyes burning brighter than ever. And as the sound grew louder, I realized that I wasn't alone. I don't know how to explain it, but the earth itself seemed to split open, like a crack in reality. And from that crack, it emerged. A figure, impossibly tall, black as night, with eyes like burning embers. Its shape was a shifting mass of darkness, too vast to comprehend, too ancient to understand. The creatures weren't retreating anymore. They were bowing. I stood there, paralyzed by the enormity of what was unfolding in front of me. The figure's gaze turned to me, and for a moment I felt it, an unimaginable power, a presence that stretched beyond time and space. And then it spoke, not through words, but through the very fabric of my mind. You have been chosen. The creatures continued to bow, their eyes locked on me as if I were some kind of messiah. But I knew the truth. This wasn't salvation. This wasn't some divine moment. It was the end. The end of the road. The end of everything. As the figure's presence washed over me, I felt myself change. My body trembled, my mind swirling with images I couldn't comprehend. And yet I understood. I knew what I had become. I wasn't running anymore. I was part of the road now. Part of the hunt. And just like them, I would watch. I would wait. And when the time came, I would take another soul to join the endless journey. The road never ends. It only calls. I'm not sure how to explain it. Maybe there are no words that can truly capture what's happened. What has happened? What I've become. But I'll try because, well, I'm not the same anymore. I don't think I ever will be. When I stood there, facing that figure in the dark, feeling that presence wash over me, I didn't fully understand. I still don't. But something inside me shifted. It wasn't just the creatures bowing. It wasn't just the endless road that seemed to stretch out beneath my feet, calling to me. It was like the very nature of the world had twisted and I had slipped into something else. Something ancient. Something alive. The figure. It was like nothing I had ever seen before. It wasn't human. It wasn't a creature or an animal. It wasn't even from this world, I think. Its form shifted and twisted, dark and cold, like it was a being that existed outside of time and space. Its eyes, those glowing embers, seemed to pierce through me. Couldn't look away. I didn't want to. Spoke again, but this time I didn't need words to understand. It wasn't speaking to me the way we speak to one another. It was speaking to me, through the very fabric of my being. You will guide them now. The creatures, the ones who had been watching and waiting all this time, seemed to nod in acknowledgement, their twisted faces full of reverence. They weren't just followers. They were subjects. And I, for reasons I still can't comprehend, had become something more. Something new. They left me then, fading into the darkness, disappearing like smoke in the wind. But I wasn't alone. That's the thing. I wasn't alone anymore. The road itself was mine now. I could feel it, like it was a part of me, deep inside my bones. I could hear it calling, always calling. There was no more running. There was no more escaping. And as I stood there, in the middle of that lonely highway, I realized that the road wasn't just something I had traveled on. It was something that had claimed me. It had marked me, and now I was bound to it, forever. I don't know how long I wandered, how long I walked the highways in the dark. My body still human, but my soul, twisted, changed. I could hear the whispers of those who had driven before me, lost to the endless miles. I could hear their cries, their pain, but I couldn't help them. I wasn't human anymore. But I'm here now, telling you this story. If you're reading this, if you've gotten this far, you've already felt it, haven't you? The pull, the call of the road. It's calling you too. That's how it works. You don't escape. You never do. It's not just the creatures anymore. It's the road. It's the force that lies beneath it that reaches out and pulls at anyone who dares to drive through the night. If you listen long enough, if you drive far enough, you'll hear the same whispers I heard. The same promises of power, of something greater than what you are. But don't fall for it. Don't think you can outrun it. I didn't get to choose. I didn't get to fight it. But you still have a chance. If you hear the growl, if you see the shadows creeping up in your mirrors, don't stop. Don't get out. Don't look too close. Because the road never ends. It just keeps calling. And once you answer, once you pull over just to see what's out there, once you get a taste of what waits in the dark, it's over. You'll never be free. You'll just keep driving. And you'll never, ever stop. It's been a long time since I wrote those words. I thought the journey had ended. I thought I had accepted the curse of the road. I thought I was past the point of no return. But there's always something deeper, something darker lurking just beneath the surface, and I've learned that it's never really over. I've been driving endlessly through countless towns, across endless highways, feeling the weight of the miles pulling at my bones. There's no true escape from it. The road is in my blood now, and there's no amount of distance that can keep it away. But something changed a few weeks ago. Something that I can't explain. It started on a rainy night, like so many other nights before. I was making a long haul up through Montana, the highway winding through the trees, the rain coming down in sheets. It was the kind of night where everything blurs together, the world outside the windshield a haze of gray, the only sound the hum of the engine and the constant hiss of the rain. I didn't know why I pulled off the road. Something just told me to. Maybe it was the feeling of being watched, maybe it was the strange pull that the road has on me, but I found myself taking an exit I had never seen before. There was no sign, no reason to stop, but I did anyway. I drove down a narrow road, the trees closing in on either side, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out toward me. The rain was heavier now, and the sound of it beating against the truck was deafening. I didn't realize how far I had gone until I came to a clearing. It was a small, abandoned rest stop. The kind you see in old horror movies, tucked away in places you shouldn't be. The asphalt was cracked, the benches broken, and the lights flickered weakly above. But there was something else there, something I hadn't expected. The figure was standing by the entrance. At first, I thought it was a person, just a trucker, like me. But as I got closer, I saw the truth. The figure wasn't human. Not anymore. Its body was twisted, warped, like it had been mangled by something beyond comprehension. But its eyes, those glowing eyes, were the same. The same eyes I'd seen in the creatures, in the shadows, in the very road itself. It saw me too. It knew me. And in that moment, I realized that it wasn't just waiting for me. It had been waiting for all of us. The thing took a step toward me, its limbs shifting in ways that made my stomach churn. The air grew thick with tension, and the low growl filled the space between us. The road, the thing that had once called me, now seemed to be pulling this creature toward me. And then it spoke. It's time. Time for you to remember. I didn't understand. What was it talking about? What was it trying to do? I didn't want to know. I tried to turn and run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen, like the road itself had me locked in place. The creature was right in front of me now, its breath hot and rancid, filling my nose with the stench of death. But then it did something I didn't expect. It reached out, a hand that was not a hand, its fingers twisting and stretching like they were made of shadow, and it touched my chest. And suddenly I remembered. I remembered everything. The road, the creatures, the whispers, the calls, it was all part of something so much bigger than I ever understood. It wasn't just a curse. It was a test. The creature smiled, its jagged teeth glinting in the darkness, and I realized with sickening clarity that I wasn't just one of its victims. I was a part of the road, a part of the hunt. It had always been this way. The road called, it took, and it shaped. I wasn't just being chased by monsters. I had become one of them. And now I was the one who would hunt. I thought I understood the road. I thought I had come to grips with the curse that followed me, that haunted me, that drove me from place to place. But when the creature touched me, when it showed me the truth, everything I thought I knew shattered. The road isn't just a path. It's a living thing. A force that stretches beyond the land, beyond the stars, and it's been waiting for me, for all of us. And now I understand. I understand that the creatures, the shadows, the whispers in the night, they weren't just random horrors. They were part of the road's design, its tools to call us, to shape us into what we need to be. I'm not just a passenger in this nightmare anymore. I'm part of it. I'm a hunter now. The thing that stood before me, the twisted figure with the glowing eyes, wasn't just some creature. It was me, or rather, it was what I would become if I allowed myself to give in. I saw my reflection in its eyes, and for a moment I didn't recognize myself. I didn't know who or what I was becoming, but I felt the hunger rising within me. "You are one of us now," it whispered, its voice like the sound of the wind through dead leaves. "You've always been one of us." I wanted to fight it. I wanted to scream, to run, to tear myself away from whatever I had become. But deep down, I knew that it was too late. I had crossed a line, a threshold that I couldn't return from. There's a darkness within the road, within every stretch of highway, every curve, and every mile. And now it's inside me. The creature took a step back, its body dissolving into the shadows like smoke. I could feel the weight of its presence, its power, slipping into me like a second skin. It was like I could see everything now, the way the road bent, the way it stretched and pulled, the way it called to the lost souls who found themselves trapped on its endless paths. I knew then that it wasn't just me. It had always been waiting for others like me. Those who had been lost, driven by the same insatiable urge to keep moving, to keep chasing the horizon. The creatures, the shadows, the distorted figures, they weren't just obstacles. They were the keepers, the ones who guided the lost souls into the hunt, into the endless journey. And as much as I wanted to fight it, as much as I wanted to push it away, I knew deep down that there was no escaping this fate. I had become what I feared, what I had tried to outrun for so long. A hunter. The road had called me, just like it calls all those who are lost. And now I was part of its curse. I walked back to my truck, the cold rain still falling, but it didn't matter. I could feel the pull of the road beneath my feet, the pull of the journey that never ends. I don't know if anyone can hear me anymore. I don't know if my voice even matters. But if you're out there, if you're reading this, know that it's too late for me. And it might be too late for you too. The road has you now. It's always had you. And when the creatures come for you, when the whispers start, when the lights go out and you hear the growl in the dark, don't turn around. Because the road never ends. It never stops. And now neither do I. I never thought it would come to this. To realize that there is no escape. That the road, the endless miles, the hunt, they've been part of me from the very beginning. When I first stepped onto this path, I thought I was just running from something terrible and unknown. But now I understand. I've always been running toward it. Toward the road. Toward the thing that calls. What I became in that moment when I gave in to the hunger, to the darkness inside me. I can't explain it. There's no name for what I am now. But I feel it. I feel it every time I step out onto the road. It's in my blood, in my veins. The road has made me its servant. Its vessel. Its hunter. I keep driving, not because I want to, but because I have no choice. The truck has become a part of me, too. It's like a second skin, a vehicle for something much darker, much older than anything human. My hands grip the wheel without thought, my eyes scanning the horizon for the next soul, the next victim of the road. It's not just about the creatures anymore. The things that lurk in the shadows, waiting for the moment to strike. They're just the beginning. The road itself is alive, is something far greater than anything I can comprehend. It's been feeding on the lost, the restless, the ones who can't find their way. And now I'm one of them. I can't escape. I can't even want to escape. The hunger inside me has taken over. Every night, I drive into the darkness, into the unknown. But the truth is, I'm not lost anymore. I know exactly where I'm going. And so do you. You see, it's not enough for the road to take you. It doesn't just want your soul. It wants your desire. It wants the yearning, the restlessness that drives you forward. And once you give in, once you start chasing that horizon, that endless stretch of black asphalt, you become part of it. I've seen it now. I've seen others. I've seen the truckers, the wanderers, the drifters, all of them, driven by something they don't understand. And every single one of them is part of the road's eternal journey. They think they're moving forward, but they're only moving deeper into the maze of the road's endless snare. And the thing is, I'm not alone. The road doesn't just claim one person, it claims everyone. There are more like me out there, more lost souls who can't find their way back. We've all been chosen. It doesn't matter how far you drive. It doesn't matter how fast you go. The road will always call you back. It will always find you. And when it does, when you answer that call, you'll be just like me. You'll become part of the hunt, part of the road. And there's no way out. You can try to stop. You can try to get off the highway, find a side road, a new path, but it doesn't matter. The road will always be there, waiting for you. It's watching. It's alive. You're a part of it now. And once you've answered the call, you'll never stop. The road doesn't end. It doesn't stop. It doesn't rest. And neither do I. I thought I had seen it all, but there's always something more. The road is a shifting thing, a living entity that constantly changes its shape, its form, its very nature. And it's been changing me too. I've lost count of how many miles I've driven since that night. The nights blur together now, just like the roads. Every mile feels the same, every turn is just another repetition of the last. The rain, the darkness, the silence that presses against my ears like a thick fog. It's endless. But the hunger, the need is always there. It gnaws at me deep down, clawing its way through my chest, pulling me forward, faster, harder. I don't want to stop. I can't stop. And every time I think I might, every time I slow down, I hear the whisper. The whisper that tells me that if I stop, I'll fade away. The road doesn't let you rest. The road doesn't let you stop. I've become part of it. A piece of something ancient, something powerful. It's like my body no longer belongs to me. It belongs to the road. The truck, the wheel, the endless stretch of black asphalt that leads to nowhere and everywhere all at once. And now I hear it. The voices of the others. The ones who have been claimed by the road before me. The ones who drive without a destination, who drift between the lines of the world and the void. They whisper from the shadows, calling to me, urging me to keep going. To never stop. They know what I've become. They know the truth. The truth that the road never ends. It's a never-ending loop. A cycle. A prison. It takes your soul and binds it to the asphalt, pulling you deeper into the labyrinth of its endless paths. There's no escape. No way out. No one is truly free. I've seen their eyes. The eyes of the ones who came before me. They're just like mine now, glowing, burning with that same hunger. The hunger that can never be satisfied. The hunger that only the road can feed. I don't even remember what it felt like to be human anymore. It's been so long since I've thought about what I used to be. My thoughts are clouded by the road. My body is no longer my own. It's a vessel for the road, for the hunger, for the chase. The road is alive, and I am its servant. And when it calls, I answer. I see the faces of others as I drive. The truckers who still believe they're in control, the ones who think they can escape, the ones who think they have a choice. But there is no choice. There never was. They are like me. We are all one now. The road claims us all, one by one, until there is nothing left but the endless highway stretching to the horizon that never arrives. And if you're listening to this, if you're reading these words, know this, you too are part of the road story. You may think you're free. You may think you're just passing through. But the road sees you. It's watching you. It's waiting for you to get lost. Waiting for you to hear the call. And when you do, when you finally stop and listen, you will be mine. The road has you now. And you will never escape. It's over now. Or perhaps it was never over to begin with. I don't know what to call this anymore, this existence, this endless journey. The road doesn't care for such concepts as beginning or end. It simply is. It always has been. I remember the first time I took this job, the first time I hit the highway thinking it was just another job, just another route to follow. But now I understand. It wasn't just a job. It was a calling. And now I am one with it. I thought I could outrun it. I thought if I kept moving fast enough, kept my foot on the gas, I might escape whatever force was waiting for me. But there was never an escape. There was never any getting away. The road had me from the start, and I was just too blind to see it. I've driven across every state, every stretch of road that this world has to offer, but it's all the same now. All the highways are the same. All the rest stops, all the truck stops, all the towns, they blur into each other. Every night feels the same. I feel the weight of it, the call, and it only gets stronger with each passing mile. It's always there, waiting for me to give in, waiting for me to embrace it completely. I've seen the others now. The ones who thought they could outrun it. The ones who thought they were free. They're just like me. Hollow. Empty. driven by the same unrelenting need to keep moving. There's no escaping the road. There's no return, no place to rest. And once you're chosen, once you've answered its call, there's no going back. You are the road. The road is you. I don't know when it happened, but I no longer recognize the man I used to be. That person is long gone. Now, when I look at myself in the rearview mirror, I see only the emptiness, the endless, hollow eyes that have become a part of me. They glow just like the others. The road has claimed me. I've become one of its hunters, one of its lost souls, driving through the night, searching for the next one to claim. The next trucker, the next wanderer, the next lost soul who will never escape. It's all a cycle, a never-ending journey that will go on long after I've forgotten what it means to be human. There's no point in fighting it anymore. It's too late for that. The road is alive. It has always been alive. And now it controls everything. Controls me. And as I keep driving, as I keep chasing that horizon that never comes, I can feel the call of the road deep within me, pulling me onward. For I know the truth now. This is the final mile. But the road never ends.